Have you ever just looked around and felt like something's missing? Like the very things that are supposed to hold our world together, well, they're the ones we never seem to see or talk about. That's exactly what we're digging into today. We're looking at a pretty powerful diagnosis of our modern world, a system that is, believe it or not, brilliantly designed to make its own foundations completely invisible.
And this quote, this is really the core paradox we're up against. I mean, think about that claim for a second. The idea that our society is actively, systematically erasing the very things it needs to survive. How is that even possible? Well, it all starts with this idea of absence.
So let's be super clear about what we mean by absence. This isn't about people literally vanishing into thin air. It's about a system that makes essential people and their work completely illegible. They're still right here, but the system, it can only see them as noise to be filtered out, a risk to be managed, or a raw material to be consumed. It's like a kind of designed structural blindness.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to look at the architecture itself, then the specific machine that produces all this invisibility. We'll talk about the actual people who disappear from view, check out the system's huge blind spot, and then, ask the big question, what does this all mean for our future?
Okay, so how is this invisibility actually made? I mean, this isn't some secret plot or a grand conspiracy, right? Nope. It's just the natural result of a system built to manage and direct our attention. We can call it the attention funnel, but really, it works more like an engagement funnel.
To even show up on the radar today, you basically have to pass through three very specific filters. First, you have to be constantly putting out a signal that can be measured, your data exhaust. Second, whatever you're contributing has to be simple enough, punchy enough to be meme-ready. And third, if you really want to get big, to scale up, it needs what's called grievance potency. It has to tap into outrage. Things like nuance, complexity, quiet, steady work, they just don't make it through this funnel.
And this slide just lays it out so clearly, doesn't it? Who gets filtered out? On one side, you've got creation and reconciliation. Building something new, fixing a broken relationship. That stuff is slow. It's quiet. It doesn't have a grievance to rally around, so it fails the funnel. But the other side? Oh yeah. Destruction and accusation. That stuff is fast, it's loud, and it creates engagement that just goes on and on. The system has this powerful built-in bias for tearing things down over building things.
And that bias gets even stronger because of something called friction asymmetry. Just think about it for a second. Building anything worthwhile, a friendship, a skill, a business, it requires friction. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes pushing against resistance. But destruction? Destruction only needs leverage. A good reputation that took a lifetime to build can be torched in a single afternoon online. Our systems are optimized for the path of least resistance, and that path, it almost always leads to destruction.
And all of this creates what you could call a liability gap. The people who are designing these systems, the ones making these massive decisions, they are more and more insulated from the consequences. When an AI makes a mistake, the person who trusted it is the one who pays the price. When a financial market collapses, it's the public that bails it out. The risk gets spread out to everyone, but the rewards, they stay right at the top.
So let's follow this thread from the abstract machine down to its real human consequences. Who are the people that this architecture makes invisible? And maybe the even bigger question is, what essential functions do we lose as a society when they disappear from our collective sight?
This table is really something. It shows that we're not just losing demographics, we're losing core civilizational functions. I mean, look at this. We make the elderly invisible, and poof, there goes our long-term memory, our sense of a horizon beyond next quarter. We make the builders invisible, and we lose the actual skills of craft and maintenance. We make caregivers invisible, and we lose the very work that reproduces society itself. We lose the middle, the people who aren't on the extreme ends, and our ability to have a real dialogue just evaporates. And we lose the experienced, swapping out their deep understanding of why things happen for shallow, fast data correlations. Each one is filtered out simply because their value just can't be measured by the system.
Now, this blindness doesn't just apply to people. It completely twists how we see our own institutions, especially things like the government. It creates this huge blind spot where really only one thing is ever in focus: failure.
This slide just nails it, right? Institutional success, by its very nature, is silent infrastructure. You don't get up in the morning and cheer because the water's clean or the power grid is stable. Success is boringly invisible. But failure? An airport delay, a budget overrun, a bureaucratic nightmare? That is a loud, frustrating, and hyper-visible experience. So the result is that we're all living off this totally biased sample of reality, which naturally leads us to believe that public things just don't work.
And that kicks off this incredibly dangerous, vicious cycle. Let's just walk through it.
Step 1. All that visible failure leads to public distrust. Step 2. That distrust makes it easy to argue for underfunding these institutions. Step 3. Well, when you underfund something, its performance gets worse. No surprise there. And that, of course, leads to Step 4. Even more visible failure, which just feeds right back into the start of the loop. And with every turn of the cycle, legitimacy just drains away from our democratic institutions, not because of some big ideological fight, but through a kind of slow, systemic exhaustion.
So, what's the ultimate price tag for all of this? What's the real civilizational cost? Well, the most profound consequence might be that this architecture of absence is severing the link between generations. It's threatening the very way civilizations keep themselves going.
A culture, a society, it doesn't just exist in a snapshot. It has to be passed on. The skills, the memories, the values, the stories, all of it has to be transmitted from one generation to the next. If you break that chain of transmission, every generation is forced to start over from scratch. And in a world as complex as ours, starting from scratch is, well, it's a recipe for collapse.
So, think back to all those people we've made invisible. The elderly, they're the ones who transmit memory. The experienced, they transmit causal knowledge, the why. The caregivers transmit the actual capacity to care. The builders, craft. The middle, the skill of dialogue. By making these essential transmitters invisible, we aren't just being unfair to a few groups of people. We are actively breaking the reproductive cycle of our own culture.
And this is where it leads. A society just adrift. A democracy that can't remember its own past mistakes, so it keeps repeating them. An economy that's totally disconnected from the real material world that actually sustains it. And a public conversation with no shared ground, no center to hold it together. And the cruelest joke of all is that nobody planned this. It wasn't some evil plot. It was the logical outcome of optimizing for things that are easy to measure, like engagement and efficiency.
It's really easy to look at a diagnosis like this and just feel hopeless. Like the system is just broken. And that's the end of the story. But what if there's another way to look at it? What if this invisibility also contains a kind of hidden strength?
You can really view this through two different lenses. The rationalist lens sees a catastrophic system failure, and it's not wrong. The exclusion is real, it's unjust, and the feedback loops are broken. But then there's the romantic lens. It sees something else entirely, preserved sovereignty. It sees that the people who are outside the attention funnel, well, they have something the rest of us are losing. They still belong to themselves. Their attention hasn't been captured and sold. Their conscience hasn't been turned into content.
And maybe both are true. Maybe the invisibles are excluded, but in that very exclusion, they've managed to preserve something incredibly precious. The skills, the memories, the ability to care for one another. They aren't just being left behind. You could almost see them as our civilization's backup copy. When the flashy digital systems inevitably falter, they are what's left.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful thought. You know, the carpenter's sturdy table will outlive the social media platform it was never posted on. The grandmother's story, passed down through generations, will outlive the server farm where it was never stored. In a world that's obsessed with the fleeting, shiny signal, it might just be the quiet, enduring, invisible things that actually see us through in the end. What does not trend can still endure, and may be what endures us.